Hello, Internet friend. I'm David Ravel, and today on Value Side, now's not the time to enter a long term monthly payment. Well, I know it's not always possible to avoid having one more monthly payment. Things happen, life circumstances sometimes make borrowing unavoidable. I get that. Recently, I needed to fly out to the West Coast for a family funeral. I didn't have the extra funds, so it all went on the credit card. Unavoidable, but what can you do? So I'm not talking about these essential payments that you have to make and turns out to increase your debt profile. Today we're looking at something different from that. We're looking at those optional payment, those I wannas that come along. Something that might be nice to have, but not essential. Those are the items that I'm encouraging you to postpone. Why? Before we begin, let me give you the standard disclaimer. I'm projecting into the future what I think will happen and how I see the economy evolving. I may be wrong, and things may not turn out the way that I think they will a year from now. I can live with that. If that happens, you will have just postponed a couple of extras that you've already said you can live without. Okay, with that said, let's go. Here's where I think we're headed. Inflation is already rearing its ugly head. Driven by the Iran conflict and the commensurate rise in energy prices, we're seeing it begin to take off. This is an early call, admittedly. In June, the latest reported month, the consumer price index stood at just 3.5%, down from 4.2% the month before. For the short term perspective, it might appear that inflation is improving. But hold on. In 10 months last year, the inflation rate was in the 2% range, only hitting 3% twice in the entire year in January and September. And in those 2 months, CPI inflation was just 3%. Now we're at 3.5%, and that extra 0.5% matters. It all put the nation's central bank, the Federal Reserve, in a bind. Despite a new chairman, Kevin Warsh, and the president asking for lower rates, it looks like the Fed will now need to raise interest rates, something that nobody wants, but now seems inevitable. However, in the end, it might not matter to you and me, because the average American consumer, that's because the banks you and I have our credit cards, home loans, and consumer loans with, are already raising their interest rates. 6 years ago, the average credit card rate was just 16%. 8 months ago, the average credit card rose to 20.78%, a 4.75% increase over those 4 years. And what's more, if you thought you could avoid these high credit card rates by getting a personal loan, that doesn't look very good either. We've all seen those advertised personal loan rates at 5% or higher. But have you tried to qualify for one? I went through the exercise to see what I'd find. As a retired homeowner with excellent credit, the best rate I could get was 30%. Now, I'm sure that someone who's 20 years younger with a well paying job and excellent credit could secure a much lower interest rate, perhaps in the 5% rate that's advertised. But the point is that if you're outside the bank's preferred target customer profile, you're unlikely to secure those advertised rates. And this should be a warning to the rest of us. For those who don't fit the target group, try not to borrow. At this point, it's time to raise the curtain on what's behind the bank's thinking. It's the real reason that banks are so persnickety on who they want as customers at this time in the financial cycle. If you've noticed, those credit card offers that used to stuff your mailbox have diminished almost to nothing. Most banks, with a couple of exceptions, are no longer looking for new customers. Instead, they're just trying to preserve their current client base. Take a look at the country's number one bank, J.P. Morgan Chase. Over the past year, J.P. Morgan has doubled its loan loss reserves from $2 billion to $4.2 billion. Now, a bank's loan loss reserve is an estimate of how many bank customers will fail to repay their loans. Banks are experts at this particular estimate. They have to be. Whether a bank survives a coming financial crisis depends on whether it has the estimated depends on whether it has estimated how many loan defaults it will have. After all, the bank will end up paying the defaulted loan themselves. That's a loan loss. So this should be screaming headline on every financial publication. JP Morgan doubles its loan loss reserve. But no, just silence. Instead, banks increase your credit card interest rate and other loan interest rates. Remember that 16 to 20% increase? The banks don't want you and me to leave. We're the ones who pay our bills on time and have good credit scores because of it. The bank wants us to continue to pay our bills, and further, they'd like us to pay a little extra because our neighbor might default. The bank can use that extra fee income from us to offset the loss from our neighbors. That's how it works. Most people fail to realize that the financial world is constantly changing, progressing from expansion to contraction, going from times when money is easy, loans are plentiful, and interest rates low, to times when all that reverses. Loans become hard to get, interest rates rise, and banks increase their loan loss reserves. These times often lead to recessions, and I believe that's where we're headed. And that's today's Value Side. For all of our articles and podcasts, visit valueside.com. I'm David Ravel. Value Side is independently written and researched. The views expressed are strictly my own.